It is 1 o'clock. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Major changes are coming to college athletics as USC and UCLA have been officially approved for a move to the Big Ten after the conference's presidents and chancellors voted unanimously to accept both schools. They'll begin competing in the Big Ten starting in 2024. To the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies and star Ja Morant have agreed to a massive 5-year, $139 million designated rookie maximum extension that could become worth $231 million, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. The Atlanta Braves are at the Cincinnati Reds for a series that starts today after a 14-4 loss at the Phillies last night. Braves are 3.5 games back of the Mets in the NL East. First pitch today is at 5:40. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Blaine and Mickey, 1045 The Zone. What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. This is not just any Friday. This is the Friday before a 3-day weekend. I would venture to say at 101 on this pre-3-day weekend Friday, many of you have headed for the exits of whatever your particular employment might be. Not everybody. So for those of you who have left, we salute you. For those of you who continue to work, we salute you. For those of you who are doing whatever the heck you're doing, we also salute you. And that we is Lucas Panzica rocking the wheels of steel, and none other than the hardest working man in show business this week, Will Boling. You've been on everything, anything that the station can throw at you. So they're like, okay, you've got to slum it out on Friday. So you've got to sit here with me. The hitman is off today. So you're hanging out. You and I were having this discussion. So you and Lucas Panzica, I heard Lucas talking earlier to Buck, and Buck was out yesterday. So he said, yeah, Will Boling and me, we're just going through first-year head coaches in the NFL.
Yes, we were.
Good or bad circumstances. And he said, suddenly Will looks at his computer is like, oh, my gosh.
I might as well have looked at my computer like someone had died. And college football, as we know it, kind of died. So I wasn't really wrong.
In a way.
So I know you guys got about 20 minutes, and you said, we got 25 minutes to react to it. And Blaine and me got 2 hours because, honestly, that's what we talked about.
Right.
I mean, it's such an interesting world as far as college football and what it means to different people in different places. And we're sitting in the epicenter of where it means as much to the people as it does to anybody anywhere. Right. Like if you said, okay, let's have a heat map of who cares about the NBA, and the coast would probably be steaming hot. Right? Yeah. The NBA, it's a
we would
coastal.
be ice cold.
Sure, like Memphis would have a little hot spot,
right.
And Dallas with the Mavericks, but mostly it would be like a super heat map of the coast. Well, if you did a college football heat map, it'd be the exact opposite.
Right.
It'd be right down the middle of America, right down the middle, and it would spill all throughout the South, Southwest and Southeast, over to Texas, all the way to Florida. So for those of us who have been raised in the middle of this country, obviously, what happened a year ago and changed with the SEC, actually, a little bit over a year ago, SEC Media Day. So
I think it was Media Days, right? So
it was like day 2 of SEC Media
with
Days.
I know all the stuff about college football and the SEC guy in the room, and none of them got that story. It happened under their noses while they're all sitting there.
2 straight years now that no one has scooped this, and it's come out, and then a couple hours later becomes official.
And so I didn't think about this. I knew that it was this week. I knew it because I was a member, Ncaa, the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics. Every AD in America was in Las Vegas at the Ncaa meetings, and Ncaa is an organization you join if you work in that business. What is that called? It's not a service organization like the Rotary Club, but it's a professional organization.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a professional organization. So yesterday, John Bryce called in and talked just for a minute. And I said, the fact that this could be flown up so many flagpoles and nobody know about it, boards of trustees, and nobody told their wife who told somebody at the club. And I'm not throwing wives under the bus, but I'm just using that as an example. Like you tell enough people enough stuff. And Bryce said, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even know how far up the flagpole this has gone with some of these schools and some of these entities. He said they were all as soon as he said it, I thought they were all in Las Vegas this week. So USC and UCLA had to have like shaken hands with each other, like,
Sure.
and Thelma and Louise, like, we're going to drive off this cliff together. So how far back does that go? Has to have a few days under its belt. It's not like they bumped into each other at the Wynn lobby and said, you know what?
They weren't at Whataburger. Or In-N-Out.
They didn't go
California.
to M&M World on the Strip and decide, let's do this.
Yeah.
But Bryce said, I think a lot of that business got done out there because it wouldn't be uncommon to see Will Boling and Lucas Panzica talking, you know, even though they're ADs of two schools that are 3,000 miles away, whatever.
Right.
So that made perfect sense. So what happened in Vegas didn't stay in Vegas. It got loose early afternoon yesterday. Actually, what, 12:40-ish, 12:35 when you guys heard about it?
It was 12:30, right on the dot.
Yeah.
And it was leaked in real time by a guy I'd never heard of, a guy who does like a podcast and covers the Pac-12.
John Wilner.
John the Will Wilner.
There was a will and there was a way.
There was
to break
both
the
of
biggest
them.
story
Thank you
in
for
college
continuing
athletics
this.
summer.
So there was a will and there was a way. So we're trying to digest this in real time, just like you guys did.
Yeah.
But you and I are having this discussion. You're new Nashville and old Nashville.
Right.
You identify with things that happen with younger people here, but you also, from the day you were born, have ties to the SEC. And you went to an SEC school. Blaine and me are Ball State and Arkansas State. We were trying to process, like, what does this mean for us?
Yeah.
So there's some of that processing in real time. Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky. What does this mean? And I wonder, like, what were your thoughts? Because ultimately you're like, well, Tennessee's still Tennessee, and they're still going to play Alabama, and Alabama's going to play Auburn, and, you know, the cocktail party's still going to happen. I'm just curious, as a lifelong SEC guy and somebody who went to one of those schools, how did you process this?
So I like it because I think that college football, with the help of Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney and Ohio State, has become far too predictable over the past decade. A lot of that is attributed to Alabama being at the height of its power. A lot of it has to do with Clemson making a miniature Alabama, so to speak, within the ACC. But I think this gives us a format to make college football more relevant from Labor Day all the way through New Year's. Because right now, the quote-unquote pageantry and the tradition of certain rivalries, for some of us, is all that we have.
Right.
There aren't a lot of teams that are playing meaningful college football games from week 1 to, week 15, I guess it is now, week 14. Week 13, I guess, when the season ends, if you're playing 12 total games.
Right.
So from week 1 to week 13, this gives us more meaningful college football. I think that's a win. I think this also is a win for the autonomy of the power conferences in consolidated power, likely in 2 conferences within the SEC and within the Big Ten, to facilitate meaningful change within the sport more efficiently and more quickly. And what I mean by that is that a 12-team playoff, the 8-team, the expanded playoff that was shot down earlier this year is much more easily passed when you have 2 conferences acting on behalf of their member institutions, not 5 conferences. And on top of that, more conferences that have a seat at the table, but really, as we know, don't have the same kind of seat at the table as the rest of the Power 5. So I think in this case, consolidated power is not a bad thing. I think it certainly puts a halt in the scheduling conversations within the SEC and protected rivals, and it slows that conversation down until this stage of realignment ends. And that's the next question I have is what is the SEC's response, or is this the Big Ten's response to what the SEC did a year ago? Like, I don't see Greg Sankey. This is one of the few times, I would argue, that Greg Sankey hasn't been at the forefront of a major shift within college athletics. You could argue he was last year with Texas and Oklahoma, and that's fair. But this shift by the Big Ten, this was the Big Ten kind of playing the role of what the SEC typically does. Mm-hmm. And the first time I can remember them doing that was in the pandemic year in 2020, when Ohio State, Gene Smith, Ryan Day, the president of Ohio State, basically went to the Big Ten and said, if they're playing down there in the South, we've got to start acting like these guys. Mm-hmm. We've got to start acting like the big boys, because the SEC is looking much more competently run compared to us. So that, to me, the pandemic in Ohio State and the ability for the Big Ten to rechart their own path after they canceled the season and coming back and saying, nope, we're going to play.
Right.
That to me was the first time of, oh, okay, so the Big Ten wants to kind of play with the big dogs now, wants to actually be run like the SEC is being run. This to me is more evidence that that's the case.
Let's get John in Clarksville in. Again, this is still huge. There's a lot to talk about today. We do have a couple of guests. Buck Reising is going to join us in this hour. Greg Jones will join us. It's the first day for Belmont to be in the Ohio Valley. Sorry, they left the Ohio Valley. It's the
One
last
valley
day.
to another.
Yesterday was the last day on the Ohio. Today is the first Missouri. I know my valleys. I just got myself a little tied up. He's going to join us briefly in the second hour as well. We'll call our shot in the second hour, but we're going to really talk a lot about this topic today. John in Clarksville will join us right here in the first segment on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline. Hey, John.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I can't complain. But, guys, when I was in college, MTSU, you know, it was Division I, Division I AA, and things, you know, of that nature. And a lot of Division I AA schools were going for the dollar because of the TD or whatever it may have been. But it was, my goodness, back in those days, you had MTSU, Georgia Southern, some really, really good football. And we're back the same way.
I appreciate the phone call, John. Well, what he's referring to is, because it happened when I was in college, the NCAA opened a window for a large number of teams to make the jump to Division I,
right,
which we know now is the group of five,
sure,
which may grow by some schools as all this shakes out. But you had to average a certain, there was like a 3-year window. You had to average, I think it was 12,000 fans per game. Your stadium had to seat 30,000. And I'm looking off in the middle of nowhere. I'm trying to like find this on the hard drive in my brain.
Right.
But like Middle did it. Arkansas State did it. Western did it a little bit later. Because they were still 1AA into the 90s and won a national championship with Jim Harbaugh.
Right.
Like Troy did it. There were all these schools that made the jump right at that time, because the 1AA thing had basically come about the end of the 70s.
Yeah.
Because Arkansas State went, and I again, sorry, but I use Arkansas State as a time marker.
Right.
Arkansas State went undefeated in 1975.
Okay.
And they were Division I. And they were like 27th in the country that year.
Yeah.
Which there was only a top 25 then.
Right.
But they were like 27th in the country. They didn't get invited to a bowl. There weren't many bowls.
Sure.
And then right after that, 1AA became a thing, and you got relegated to that status. And I don't know what the criterion was.
Right.
I think it was basically if your budget was probably at a certain level, your attendance, your facilities, that move probably got helped. You probably got pushed in a specific direction. Like you boys need to slide on down to this level.
Right.
So in the early 90s, a window got opened back up. That's what the caller was talking about. Now, do we get back to something like what happened in the late 70s where because here's the thing. Lucas is in my ear saying, we got to go, because I know we got Buck coming on. Heather Dinich said last night the Big Ten schools are going to make 80 to 100 million. Then by this morning, she had dropped the 80 and just said they're going to get about 100
It
million.
might end up 150 by the end of the weekend.
It may be. So that's just to walk in the building and turn on the lights in the morning and take the check from the Big Ten.
Right.
Well, that's the budget of any 2 or 3 schools playing in this lower level of Division I athletics. If you've got $100 million before you sell one ticket, one T-shirt, one anything, that means you can afford to pay your players.
The gap of the haves and the have-nots grew a whole lot yesterday.
Sure did.
And it's only going to continue growing. And I think some of the more stressful phone calls that are being made around college athletics behind the Rose Bowl committee, who I still think is probably freaking out more than anybody right now, since the Pac-12 might not exist anymore. But I think a lot of those G5 programs are trying to position themselves of, all right, is the Big 12 going to exist? Can we basically recreate the American Athletic Conference, but use Big 12 infrastructure of TV dollars and all of the resources that they have? So it's not just the Big Ten schools and the SEC schools that are affected by this, obviously. And I think that's something we can get into over the course of the show today is the churn of all of these conference at the top and the bottom and how that affects the next man up, the next conferences between the American and places like that.
Yep, absolutely. And somebody had asked me, do you think those other schools will continue to exist from a football standpoint? I said, well, somebody's got to play football on Tuesday and Thursday nights on ESPN3. So, of course.
Action must go on. It must go on.
And Fun Belt action as well. All right,
right.
when we come back, Buck Reising will make a triumphant return. He's been gone most of the summer, but he will join us next. We'll talk Titans. Maybe we'll even ask him his thoughts on this. I know you'll find them interesting. That's next on Blaine and Mickey with special guest host Will Boling. Blaine and Mickey, 1045 The Zone. Nice
I really thought this was
pulsating mid-tempo song here to
I really thought this was the
leisurely
Stranger Things song, and I was really excited.
bring on Buck Reising on
I'm
Friday.
surprised we haven't used that as a bed.
I was going to say, what? Come on, let's go. Chop, chop. I'm kidding.
Buck Reising, brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, home of the non-commissioned salespeople. We've been having like a Where's Waldo thing. Where in the world is Buck Reising? But you're actually here today. You're just somewhere in your car. What's going on, Bucky? How are you?
Well, I am in my car, but for the first time, I'm on my way to a golf lesson because I'm trying to be confident on a golf course. since Slay thought that he could win a second-place trophy and then talk smack to me. But by the golf course is a Whataburger. So I'm actually getting ready to try Whataburger for the first time while on noted Whataburger fanatic Mickey Ryan's radio show.
You should see his face right now, Buck.
What are you trying to get down to by training camp again?
Do they have healthy options?
No, it's Whataburger.
It's not Whata salad. It's Whataburger, Buck. Come on, buddy.
If you get a salad there, I don't know you.
Listen, Chick-fil-A has my favorite salads. Like Chick-fil-A.
That's actually true.
Slaps. So
I'm with you on that.
I think that I was hopeful, and I was looking for something on the way out here, and the only thing that I could find was this Whataburger. So I'm gonna, I guess, try it.
All right. They have, if you like spicy stuff, they have spicy options. I would toss. I get plain stuff because I have the stomach of a 23-year-old cat. But for those of you who can eat spicy stuff, have at it. Like the sweetened spicy bacon burger or something like that. I think you'd like it.
I can't wait for my cats to turn 23 and to see what exactly that looks like.
Well, what an odyssey you guys are having together, and to think they were just trash pandas who chose you to spend their life with. College football has chosen to spend its life with all of us, and seismic shift yesterday. I know we talked to you about Titan stuff, but Will Boling had a good idea. He said, Buck didn't grow up down here in the South. Maybe he's got different thought processes where some would be lamenting the death of traditional college football. How are you about the events of yesterday and where we're going with like these super conferences?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't care about, Minnesota versus Northwestern on a Thursday night. Like, I want to watch the biggest names, the biggest brands in college football, and I want to see them play as often as humanly possible in the most accessible way possible. So for people like me who don't have this stuff like ingrained in their soul, yeah, it's great because I don't care about much of the fringe college football stuff anyway. But I completely understand people who, come through this stuff generationally, and it's as much a part of their family fabric as anything else in somebody else's life might be. So I do understand why that's the case, but at a certain point, everything evolves, and this just happens to be a particularly greedy evolution that I think a lot of college football fans would have liked to cover up or have remained in the shadows rather than Will Wade and strong-ass offers in real life.
Well, and your beloved Indiana Hoosiers, according to one Heather Dinich, who's projecting revenue for this new Big Ten, says each school might get up to $100 million. Well, I mean, some of that's going to trickle over to basketball as well, which we know you love college basketball. But how about that as a number? $100 million per school.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're when you look at it against what the Pac-12 currently earns on its television deal, next to something like that, there's no question that it makes the most sense for them, for USC and UCLA to do that. Indiana's one of these, very few college athletics programs actually finish in like the financial black. Indiana's one of them who does on an annual basis. So, an extra 100 mil though, or whatever the new number ends up being on top of what they're already making, an extra $50 or $60 million. Yeah, sure. Sign me up for that.
Raise the banner, Buck, of the in the black, finished in the black, 2022, Indiana University.
I'm not the hockey team. I don't have time for.
Well, that's true.
Banners.
Oh,
That's
my goodness.
Smart. It's interesting, though, Buck, because I feel like within NFL circles and within people like you that are covering the NFL that perhaps maybe just and I'm not saying you're in this boat, but people that are watching college football for the sake of film review of the NFL and of the NFL draft. Does this add intrigue from an NFL watcher that is not really cared as much about college football in the past? How does the diehard NFL fan process this news? Because I feel like there's going to be a lot of people like you that are going to become more interested in college football because of this.
Well, let me answer your question with another question. What has this college football news cycle felt like?
The NFL.
It's felt exactly. I mean, this is what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
That's the most successful business model. What the hell else are we going to talk about with college football on July the 1st outside of recruiting that is very, very hyper-local type of stuff? We get now the ability to talk about this on a mainstream level. everybody can understand, in ways that everybody can be interested in some form or fashion, for or against. It's a more mainstream approach to a sport that, while it is the country's probably second favorite sport behind the NFL, it still has been a very, very regionally based product. It's why the idea of, it helps basically justify what they wanted all along, which was an expanded college football playoff. This is how they ultimately achieved that goal, with more big brands, more name brands, larger interest later into the year. There's no disputing the logic that this provides, other than, maybe it roughs up a couple of geographic rivalries that meant something to somebody 30 years ago.
See, Buck, I just picture you the first time that Indiana plays in the Rose Bowl. Do you claim that as a Rose Bowl title if you beat UCLA in the Rose Bowl in a regular season Big Ten game? Like, I see you enjoying these California trips. Maybe this will make you invest in your Indiana football program even more.
Yeah, I'm probably still not going to watch it.
I was giving you an opportunity.
No, I'm okay. Like I said, I care about the college football. I care about the teams that I have to care about, with the SEC and all the the major brands. Those I would prefer to spend my time watching those. And if USC happens to be on the other side of an Indiana game, well then maybe I'll watch an Indiana game.
Buck, I feel like, and I made this point earlier on in the show, I feel like the day that the Big Ten reversed course in 2020 and came out of the pandemic and said, you know what, the SEC's playing football, everyone else is playing football, we have to treat ourselves like we are the big boys at this table as well and start acting a little bit more like the SEC. To me, that was the first shift in the Big Ten's thinking of, all right, we've got to be a little bit more rowing at the same direction, at the same pace as what the SEC is doing. Would you agree with that? And if not, why?
I'm inclined to agree with that.
Okay.
I think the logic of that computes. Ultimately, this is the decision-making process. This is the cost-benefit analysis that all these athletic directors and college football commissioners are having to make. And I could understand why the train of thought would lead somebody in that direction.
Buck Reising, our guest, Buck Reising Show, A to Z Sports, many places, the Install podcast. You can find Buck all over your radio and internet dial. What is currently, it's July 1st, rookies report the 23rd, vets on the 26th for the Titans. What's currently in your mind the biggest Titans story? If you had to write an article, I know you write a lot for A to Z, sometimes for the Zone. If the powers that be said, write an article and call it the biggest story right now for the Titans, what would that be?
I would say probably Jeff Simmons holdout or hold in,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think that there's real. It's been a fairly dramatic offseason just for the Titans. Not really anywhere else in the NFL has it been this consistently tumultuous, basically since the draft. But yeah, Jeff is probably the headline, a number one, I think, of all the different things. Even as easy as an asthmatic first round pick at wide receiver, replacing one of the better wide receivers that the franchise has had in recent memory. As far as that stuff goes, I think that as far as consequential football conversation, Jeff's contract matters a great deal.
I was asking you, you were leaving earlier, and I said, I'm going to hit you with a tough question. So here it is. I was looking through the free agent list after this season. It includes NWI, David Long, Amani Hooker. So can you rank your priority if you're Buck Robinson, John Robinson's new assistant, rank those three in order of importance of signing them and bringing them back?
So I think that first is Amani Hooker. I think that second is David Long, and I think that third is NWI. Now, in most other circumstances, I would take the wide receiver over the inside linebacker, because I think you can, Jayon Brown and David Long, guys like that consistently prove that you can find these dudes throughout the course of a draft process. So not to diminish them specifically, it's not a premium position. The only reason I would put NWI third on that list is because that this is an offense that is very, very run heavy. And I think if a former undrafted rookie wide receiver, even though he's Indiana's own, in an offense like this where you run the football so much, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Hell, that was part of the justification for not paying AJ $25 million a year. I would think that you can find another NWI. And Amani Hooker's just a good player at safety. He works well with Kevin Byard. He understands the system. He's a good representative of your franchise. Like, he's done all the things over a sustained period of time to earn that second deal. But frankly, I'd be comfortable moving on from either David Long or NWI.
There you go, Buck Reising joining us here on the Blaine and Mickey Show.
Buck, it's interesting talking about this defense because there aren't a whole lot of question marks coming into this season based on the health of Bud Dupree in year 2 in a Tennessee Titans uniform, the inside linebacker duo you mentioned featuring David Long that had a lot of time together at the end of last season. But Caleb Farley appears to me to be far and away the biggest wild card on this defense right now. I know Kevin Byard, I know coaches and players have been complimentary of his efforts over the offseason to be in the facility to rehab another injury. But what are you hearing about him? What is the latest on his status going into this training camp? Because it feels like he is the biggest X factor in that unit right now.
Yeah, he's healthy. I mean, which is the biggest question I think that people have around Caleb Farley outside of, like, does he know how to play corner? Because it's really only 2 years at Virginia Tech. Playing that position after having converted from wide receiver, which he was initially recruited at. He's physically built different in a way that you can tell year over year. I think Mike Vrabel's brought that up a couple of times before. But outside, like, I appreciate what they tell us about what he does.
Sure.
I think they necessarily tell us that he was a bum if you pick up the playbook. But everybody that I've talked to about Caleb Farley seems comfortable with where Caleb Farley's at. But I mean, you also have to consider there's just not live reps there. Like, you don't really know, will really feel the other about Caleb Farley for certain until about halfway through the season, if he is to claim that starting job, because he doesn't have those live reps. You're replacing whatever you thought of Jackrabbit Jenkins. Like, that's 10 years going into 11 years of NFL experience. You understand the nuances that NFL wide receivers bring to attacking an NFL secondary, and specifically the corner spot. You understand coverages at a much deeper level and how to execute them. You've seen most of these quarterbacks play at some point or another, or played against them in the league. And Farley has, very, very little of that, and only last year out of necessity because of injuries in the secondary that caused him to have to make that week 6 start and then ultimately tear his ACL. So, it's a big question. And I think more importantly than anything else is, does he know how to play the position?
Well, and Buck, too, you've seen so many times John Robinson and other NFL teams obviously do this. It's not a Titan-specific thing. Bring in the veteran, bring in the Jackrabbit Jenkins that is the contingency plan and is the bridge to a guy like that. To me, that's one of the biggest holes in the Titans' defense, is the fact that there probably isn't a veteran who is there in case Caleb Farley has another issue or just isn't ready to play that position. What is the Titans' plan B if Caleb Farley isn't ready to be that guy opposite Christian Fulton?
Well, I would disagree. I think Buster Skrine at 33 years old, he's definitely the most senior member of the secondary, and they got great snaps out of him last year. Roger McCreary's a second-round pick. He can play outside or inside, and unlike Caleb, he has 3 years of SEC starting experience. Well, 2 years of SEC starting experience, and then, he did get some substantial snaps in his sophomore season. But because he doesn't have all of these physical and athletic gifts that somebody like Caleb Farley does, he's actually had to learn the nuances of playing corner. Chris Jackson is somebody who started on the outside for them before. I don't think it's a great option, but it's something that can be provided. He's just listed as a DB. He was a safety at Marshall, but obviously they played him primarily at corner in their nickel and dime looks, and started him on the outside when it necessitates it. So yeah, I feel fine about that as far as that depth spot is concerned. It's the offensive depth that I think that makes you a little queasy if you look down the list.
Buck Reising with us here on 104.5 The Zone.
Buck, I know you were talking about this. Our guy TD Tron Davenport was taking part in an ESPN straw poll, I guess, of team reporters of when rookie quarterbacks in this class might play. Curious what his thoughts were on Malik Willis, and where do you arrive on those thoughts? When did he predict you had to predict a first start, right? What did he say for Malik Willis?
Yeah, week 15, 2023. I said 2024 when I saw you guys earlier, but it's week 15, 2023, which of course is probably even still a generous assessment for Malik. I mean, it is far more likely that Ryan Tannehill earns another contract here than, or at least plays out his existing contract through the 2024 season, than it is that Malik Willis win that starting job from him. And that's not an indictment of Malik Willis. It's just, it speaks to the nature of how much this dude has to learn. And he has the ability to learn it because of the situation that they have in front of him. You want to give Malik Willis as a third-round pick at a position where so rarely do guys picked outside of the first round, and even guys picked in the first round.
Yeah.
The hit rate for quarterbacks is so low. So you have the ability to build them from the ground up, basically, and that's something I talked to Pat O'Hara about. Mickey, I think you might have been out there for assistant coaches during mandatory minicamp. Basically what they're just doing operations, how to call play, how to work a huddle, how to get them into the right play at the line of scrimmage, how to do all of that on a 40-second play clock and make sure that and do it in a way that makes the rest of the 10 guys on the field out there with you feel confident about your ability to execute that play. You're talking about college quarterbacks who have more experience than current college quarterbacks, guys who are going to play in let's take the SEC, for example, in 2022. Will Levis at Kentucky and Bryce Young at Alabama both play in pro-style offenses.
Yeah.
They have a leg up, and they have a year worth of leg up of experience operating a pro-style offense than somebody like Malik Willis, who is already in the league. So those things can't be discounted. Even as it comes standard, I think, for a lot of people, just, it makes a lot of sense. A quarterback should be able to play the position of quarterback at one level or the other. But what we know of college football is that it's so easy to scheme around deficiencies and manufacture offense. So when you see an entire offense, wide receivers, quarterback, lineman, and running back, look to the left, hold up a play card that's got, Mickey Ryan's face on it.
A Whataburger logo.
Yes, Cheeto. Yes.
Whatever it is, a Whataburger logo. Yeah. I thought about having you order for me while we were on the air mix, but the line's too long. I don't think it's going to work out the way that I wanted it to. But yeah, he's got a lot of work to do, and they're working on it, and they've got the ability to do that because Tannehill is their starter. Full stop.
God, I would have loved so much if Buck was live on the show right now and gets up to the window. Can I have a grilled chicken salad? Can you give me like a bottle of water with that and maybe some fries or something like that?
Yeah, no, I like I said, I thought about having Mickey order for me in real time, but the person working the drive-thru right now doesn't look like they're having a good day, so maybe we won't play a gag on them.
If Ryan Tannehill stays healthy the whole season, do you think – I'll ask you this. How many games do you think Malik Willis might be seen in any capacity, even if it's a run formation option type deal where they put him out there to run something on the goal line? If Ryan Tannehill is healthy for 7 games, how many games in any capacity do you think we might see Malik Willis this year?
If you said if Tannehill is healthy,
if he's healthy,
games?
Yep. If he's healthy for all of the games,
7 games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that for Malik Willis, we've seen plenty of like occasionally what your did you coin wild bat, Mickey?
Yes. For Cameron Batson.
We've seen plenty of Cam Batson wildcat formations. So I'd probably say 4 or 5 games, something like that. That may be a conservative estimate. I think they use that Batson package more than in 4 or 5 games, but that sounds about right.
Okay, just run him in the wild bat. I like it. All right, Buck, we know you're about to order your dinner and about to have your golf lesson. It was fantastic talking to you. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and hopefully we'll meet up again next Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel, same wild bat time.
Hey, hit him straight, Buck. Hit him straight.
Thank you, boys. Have a great weekend.
All right, Buck Reising. You can tell he sounds deflated, like somebody who's about to order a grilled chicken salad at Whataburger.
He sounds like someone who's gone
to be embarrassed on the golf course.
Who's gone back and forth between vacation this week. Like Ramon Foster did the same exact thing. He came back from vacation this morning to work a Friday before a holiday. That has got to be like on the motivation scale of like how energized you feel getting to work.
Especially when you got to get up when Ramon's got to get up.
Like coming back from vacation as your only day of the week to work on a Friday before a long weekend. It's got to be low on the list.
Good question by Will Boling. I don't even know if he remembers it, but he asked Buck a question. I'm curious where you fall on this. Zone TV chat, Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline, at Blaine and Mickey Twitter. By the way, 615-737-1045. Does all this stuff in college football that's happening, does it help or hurt your interest in college football? Buck Reising said it helps his a lot. Because now I'm only going to see the best teams play the best teams. I don't care about some rivalry between two backwoods, places that you boys are interested in.
The Paul Bunyan's Axe Trophy really took a tough hit yesterday.
He doesn't want to see that. He wants to see the best of the best. Do you feel that way? Or are you sad maybe that the regionality of this is going? Curious. We can talk about that next. It's Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. 4-5 The Zone, getting down on a Friday. Friday ahead of a 3-day weekend. Unless you don't have one. And if you don't have one, just disregard it. Maybe you're working.
You're talking to me. You're talking to me.
You're working for the week. That's right. You got a big track meet to cover.
I've got track tomorrow in Atlanta. I am emceeing the Firecracker 5K road race Monday morning in Brentwood. Looking forward to that. That'll be an early 5 a.m. wake-up call, but it'll be fun.
No kidding. I just say, you were saying, I got to go to Atlanta. I'm just going to come back, though. I'm just going to drive back late at night. I'm like,
definitely.
Just go by the Varsity, pull in, get the biggest frosted orange drink that they will make you.
Oh, it's the best.
The biggest one they'll make you, whatever it is. If they have a supersize, say, could you supersize that? And you'll get a full night supply of sugar, get a sack of onion rings. Like not even an order.
Yeah.
Say, fill up the sack.
Yep.
And then whatever you want as a main course, the burger with chili, the chili
2 dogs
dog,
walking.
whatever you want. Yeah, just make.
That's my favorite is that they call 2 hot dogs to go, 2 dogs walking.
2 dogs walking. They'll probably throw some slaw in there and some
Yeah,
chili.
that's right.
Man, I would have the most explosive situation. I'd have to pull over on the side of the road somewhere near like South Pittsburgh.
I was going to say, God bless the Monteagle bathroom. That's on the other end of a sack of onion rings at the Varsity.
I would probably get what is it, South Pittsburgh, right?
South Pitt is just, it's between Chattanooga and Monteagle, like right there in between, right before Monteagle.
From Alabama, I think
up.
that, or from Atlanta, that's as far as I could get. South Pittsburgh.
I don't mind the Atlanta drive. I grew up doing it because we have family down there. We go to a ton of Braves games. But I don't, because you have like the natural breakup of Chattanooga is like a major like city to get through. And then like once you're there, it's not that bad. Like and I love a 3-lane interstate in states. That's something. Tennessee, T-Dot, if you're listening.
More 3-lane.
Give me a 3-lane interstate. For
Bring
the whole
us
state.
your finest 3-lane interstate.
Snap a finger. Do it for us. Thanks.
So Derek says, I love it. Here's the question. Do you like or not like? Because people typically have strong feelings about their sports. Maybe you're passive about other things, but you have strong feelings about sports. Do you like or do you not like what's going on and the inevitability of there's going to be a top league and it'll go on its own rogue and they're going to pay their players? And Derek says, I love it. He said, it helps my interest. This is on the Zone TV chat. It might be unpopular, but I like the idea of college becoming basically an NFL minor league.
Yeah.
Which it kind of is now because there's no minor league football because
Sure.
I don't count the USFL or the future of the XFL, though I'm fine with those. And the Canadian League is what it is. It's its own standalone. Like, people aren't going to Canada thinking, I'm going to play my way back to the NFL.
Right,
they may think
right.
that, but it just doesn't happen that often. But I think for people like Derek who are like, maybe he doesn't have a specific team that he just loves, or I don't know where Derek's from. I'm just using his example because he answered the question. If you're like Buck Reising and you just, I don't care. I just want to see great competition at the highest level, whether it's swimming or diving or college football or checkers, you about to get that. All of it that you want.
You are. And I just like that. I think college football is now going to be able to implement the changes that it wants to implement without having to wait 10 years to get approval from every self-interest and every conference that is acting upon their own self-interest. We were talking about this before the show off air today in the green room that now the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 would certainly retroactively accept the offer to expand the college football playoff that was earlier this year, back in the winter, that would give themselves automatic bids into the college football playoff. Because at that point, if they had accepted that deal, then they are on life support. They're not kind of dead like they already are now. They would still have a path to the college football playoff. USC and UCLA, I think, are still members of the Pac-12 if the college football playoff had expanded in the winter. So what that tells me is that USC and UCLA are partially making this move now in order to give themselves a bigger seat at the table to help make those choices in the future, to be within the haves and not the have-nots of college football. I think the next discussion is going to be scheduling and how much these programs are playing Group of 5 programs and playing, Tennessee starting off with Blaine Bishop's Ball State to start the season on Thursday night in Neyland Stadium. I think there's probably a path where you're only seeing one of those games a year, and maybe it's homecoming. Maybe everybody's homecoming is the one non-conference game. So then you get into, okay, well, is week 1 then a conference game? Is week 1 a matchup with the other power conference? Is Tennessee going to Happy Valley to play Penn State or, Pittsburgh like they are this year? I think coaches now are going to start complaining about, we need a preseason. The NFL has the preseason, and if the college football landscape is going to turn into a miniature minor league NFL, where coaches are going to start raising their hands as saying that, all right, then what's our preseason? Is it in the spring? Blaine's brought up the point that why not play FCS programs in the spring instead of playing yourself in a spring game? Mm-hmm. Play Tennessee Tech in Neyland Stadium in April instead of playing yourself. Have an actual football game. And that's a buy game for Group of Five and for FCS programs to continue to have programs that actually play football and can make money. So I think the next couple days are going to be fascinating with all this.
So, Mickey, Coach Mack was on the Buck Reising show earlier today. He likened this to 1996 when the Southwest Conference disbands. And even before that, when Arkansas moves into the SEC and the SEC creates divisions. I'm trying to track in our conversation on Inside Zone, by the way, 145 The Zone Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcast, what your timeline was like in 1992 when the SEC starts with Arkansas as a new member, and then 1996 if you were out of Arkansas by then or if you were in Bowling Green when the Southwest Conference was disbanded. But what that reaction was like does this give any sort of deja vu to the mid-90s where people saying the world of college football is melting and it's over as we know it? 1996 when the historic Southwest Conference goes away and the SEC is still early on in this era of divisions?
I left Arkansas in 96 and went to Bowling Green.
Okay.
When I was a TV anchor in one of my many other job lives. I was never a big Razorback guy. I mean, I was aware of them, and certainly they're the big, they're the big thing in the state of Arkansas. Arkansas doesn't have a pro team, so the closest thing is by far the Razorbacks. I remember asking like my Arkansas alum friends, "What do you think about this?" Because all that we all knew was the Southwest Conference. Which, if you're thinking, "What are you talking about?" It was all the schools in Texas and Arkansas. Yeah. That was a conference, the University of Arkansas. Nothing else. All the schools in Texas, Arkansas. So A&M and Texas and TCU and Rice, and it was magical. Baylor, but it was Arkansas versus everybody. And at the time, I remember asking like Arkansas alums, and everybody didn't have a blog then, and there was no Twitter, and there wasn't even nearly as much sports talk radio as there is now.
Sure.
So you just kind of went and talked to people, or you'd read articles written about it in Sports Illustrated or the newspaper by the columnist who covered a particular team or conference. And Arkansas fans seemed elated, although some were confused. Like, I don't know, man, the Southwest Conference has been pretty good to us. I mean, I know it's the SEC, but the SEC's notoriety has only grown since then.
Sure.
It's being recognized as the top conference, or, well, Big Ten people might say us, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, at that time, it was a great conference, and there were a whole lot of people who had great faith in it and loved the traditions and all, but it wasn't the juggernaut that it is now, where literally we're about to have a Power 2, and it's one of the two. So I just remember thinking, well, this is just so different, because basically, they left the driveway and turned the same direction every time and went to play a school in Texas. Now they're going to Florida, and they're going to go to Tennessee, and they're going to go. I feel like Howard Dean. We're going to go to Florida. We're going to go to Tennessee. So then
Greenbow, Alabama.
So they were going to go to all these other places. At the time, I don't remember feeling this seismic feeling that I do now, because the thought of anybody getting paid or, a $1 billion TV contract, it wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, nothing close to this magnitude, right?
It didn't feel like, okay, the entire sport is going to change. Yeah. It just felt like, Frank Broyles, it just felt like somebody at Arkansas made a fantastic decision, and they did. That was
another step in the evolution of college football, right? I feel like that's what this is, too. It's just the biggest step that we've seen. But college football wasn't just going to stand pat.
Right. The biggest question now, you talk about Arkansas, I'm looking at Missouri now to see what they do. Because I think Missouri is now a better cultural fit for the Big Ten than they are the SEC.
I've been saying that for years. I got so many. The maddest, and you guys know me, I don't really make people mad. The maddest I've ever made people, to the point that I got like ugly messages about it. I was like, look, why is Missouri even in the SEC? And this is not a shot at Missouri. It's like, you belong geographically with the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Like, geographically, you're sitting right. You're not in the South. I mean, not that none of that matters anymore.
Yeah, geography's out the window.
That's the coldest I've been in a football game was in Columbia, Missouri. 19 degrees.
I watched DGB run wild over my team one night.
Titans legend.
DGB, Titans legend.
Absolutely.
But this feels so much bigger than that. At that point, we were so innocent. We had no idea what was to come. It just felt like boy, Arkansas is making a big business decision. Hope it pays off for them. Well, it did, and it's about to pay off. Millions and millions of times over. All right, hour number 2 is coming up. Lots to discuss with this stuff. Also, today is the first day for Belmont in the Missouri Valley, and we'll hear from the president of Belmont University. That's coming up. Call your shot. If you've got a shot you want to call, get ready to do all that because there's only 1 hour of this jocularity left.
It is 2:02. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Well, you likely know by now that USC and UCLA have been approved for a move to the Big Ten after the conference's presidents and chancellors voted unanimously to accept both schools. They will start competing in the Big Ten starting in 2024. But what about the ripple effect for other major Pac-12 programs? Well, a report from Dennis Dodd from CBS stated earlier today that Oregon and Washington have been told by the Big Ten that it is standing pat for now and waiting on a decision by Notre Dame. In the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies and star Ja Morant have agreed to a massive 5-year, $193 million designated rookie max extension that could become worth $231 million, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. Atlanta Braves are at the Cincinnati Reds for a series that starts today after a 14-4 loss at the Phillies last night. Braves are 3.5 games back of the Mets in the NL East. First pitch tonight at 5:40. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The Zone. What's up, everybody? It is the second hour of the Friday show. Friday ahead of a holiday weekend, so we hope you're already having some fun and getting ready for a big weekend. Big story that continues from yesterday that certainly has dominated a lot of what we've talked about today, of course, is the arrival of, soon to be arrival, 2024. Some are saying it could happen of USC and UCLA to the Big Tens. We've explored different angles of that. We'll continue to do it. It's a fascinating thing. The future of college football and college athletics is changing all the time. And as we went off the air yesterday, there was some speculation of, so what happens next? I mean, you still got Oregon sitting out there. Oregon, they got all this Nike money. What about Washington? They've won at least a share of, I think they may have shared their national championship in 1990, but they won a national championship. So you start getting into some of these things. Well, this is from Dennis Dodd. I've seen others report this as well. Oregon and Washington have been told by the Big Ten it is standing pat for now. And this is wildest of wild cards in all this, per Dennis Dodd again, and per all of us yesterday who said this. But now it's
Yeah, right.
They're waiting on a decision by Notre Dame.
Ah, yes. Notre Dame. I love the quote as well. I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was Pete Thamel who was reporting that one source told him that it looks to be unsustainable for Notre Dame to continue without a conference. And our friend Mike Golick Jr., who's on the station quite a bit, quote tweeted that and said, gee, I wonder which conference that source came from. I wonder who's possibly putting out there that Notre Dame has to now basically join a conference. Look, I think Notre Dame is the first domino, and then I think we're talking about a domino grouping of Oregon, Washington, and then Clemson, Florida State, Miami, because the ACC side of this is not something that we have been aware of yet. And I think it might be until SEC Media Days that if Greg Sankey and the SEC want to leak something out, want to do something to mirror this shift by the Big Ten, it's probably going to happen around the time of SEC Media Days within the next month. But we'll see. For now, it's Notre Dame waiting on you guys.
ACC grant of rights, which means their TV deal, doesn't expire until 2036.
Yeah.
So a lot of people saying, okay, we're about to see just how challengeable these things are.
That's right.
Because if you're Clemson and you start trying to claw your way out of that, about to see what it's going to cost them to get out. If you're Miami, if you're Florida State, those are North Carolina's maybe the other school that's getting mentioned.
Right.
Certainly them and Duke are probably a package deal, you would think. But this story continues to grow, and there's another college athletic story locally that continues to grow, and it is, as of today, the first day in the Missouri Valley Conference for Belmont. And I mean, why not just go straight to the top? Greg Jones,
That's right.
Of the whole operation over there, joins us. Greg, congratulations, man! Big day for you and big day for the school.
Thank you. We're excited about joining the Missouri Valley Conference.
Did you tell them when they hired you 13 months ago to the day, hey, you just hook your wagon to the old Greg Jones trade and great things are going to happen, and here you are with the last laugh 13 months later?
Well, I didn't know exactly what would happen, but this is great news to have happen, and we're excited about next year.
So official, as of today, again, joining the Missouri Valley, just on the surface, Belmont fans, for local sports fans, what does this mean for Belmont? For people to say, okay, why make the switch? What does it mean?
Well, it's a great question. It means that we're going to have heightened athletic competition. The Missouri Valley is a really strong league. It's a basketball-centric league. It's a league that typically gets 2 or 3 bids in both men's and women's basketball for the NCAA. It also opens us up to markets in Chicago and St. Louis, which is also helpful to us for recruiting students. So it's just a win all the way around for us.
Greg Jones, our guest president of Belmont. So yesterday, obviously, big seismic news in the college athletics world. A lot of it has to do with the politics of football and angling for positions there. People are new to Nashville at Belmont. You guys don't compete in football. That's a sport you don't sponsor. But what were your thoughts on yesterday as you watched all this unfold?
Well, it's been a turbulent several years in NCAA with conference moves, and didn't surprise me in one sense because I think particularly the SEC and the Big Ten are in a kind of yin and yang competition to see who can get bigger and have more power in football. I think one of the things we're likely to see is the so-called Power Five are not going to be a Power Five. I think we're going to see some ongoing realignment and may end up with a group of 2 or 3 real power conferences, and those people play in a different stratosphere when it comes to size of budgets and money, and football really does drive those conferences.
Well, you want to break some news today? Football coming to Belmont when?
Nope. We're undefeated in football since 1890, and
That's
we want
right.
to keep it that way.
Undefeated since 1890 in football. Greg Jones, president of Belmont, joins us here on Blaine and Mickey.
I love it. Greg, Will Boling here. Great to talk with you. So I am a 2006 graduate of the Belmont basketball camp. I remember this very well growing up here in Nashville. And look, I've been going to Belmont games as long as I can remember. It is so cool to see how your institution, how Belmont Athletics have grown with the city of Nashville. And as Music City has grown, Belmont Athletics has grown. This is another step in that process. How cool is that for you guys? I know that's something you guys have to really be marketing and recruiting to is, look, this is one of the greatest cities. It's one of the fastest growing cities, and we're growing right along with it.
Exactly, and I think athletics has been a real bellwether for us in that way, and that was part of the allure for the Missouri Valley Conference when they approached us. They loved Belmont and what the university represents. They also love Nashville as a market. And when I look back at the leadership that Rick Byrd had in men's basketball back when you were with Casey following him, and the work Bart Brooks is doing, it's our recruiting is getting stronger. Our competition is getting stronger. We came within just a hair's breadth of our women beating Tennessee at Tennessee last spring. And so I think we're going to continue to ascend in our reputation and our competition level. And I think it's a great thing for Nashville as well.
So, Greg, why now? Why 2022? What made this the perfect time for Belmont to make this move this summer to the Missouri Valley Conference?
Well, I think when I became president, we looked around, and the Ohio Valley Conference had already lost a couple of schools a year ago in eastern Kentucky and Jacksonville State, and then Austin P announced they were going to be moving, and it's just been a turbulent time. And so it was a time where I think in instability, you either want to be aggressive or you become passive, and we decided that this was a time. The Missouri Valley Conference reached out to us. We've really been at a threshold where our basketball, both men's and women's programs, have been knocking on the door of not just getting into the NCAA tournament, but actually winning games. And we wanted to have that kind of iron sharpens iron kind of competition where every game becomes a challenging game. I was talking to the AD at Loyola of Chicago, which joined the Missouri Valley Conference about 8 years ago, and he said when they entered the conference, they were at the bottom of the league, but the stature of the league and the competition, enabled them to keep getting better, and they ended up making the Final Four. And he said Belmont's going to start at a much higher level in the Missouri Valley Conference, and we were just really excited about that level of competition, the exposure, and what it'll mean for us on a national stage.
Greg, it was really cool seeing the brand new facility you guys have for athletics and that opening up this past year. And I remember talking with Scott Corley, with members of your staff and members of of the athletic department there, just so excited about the recruiting aspect of having that kind of building, a state-of-the-art facility. You mentioned the recruiting aspect of joining the Missouri Valley Conference. I've got to imagine that your coaches, your athletic director have to be thrilled with all of the new tools and resources just these past couple of years now at their disposal to recruit athletes here to Belmont.
Absolutely. The Crockett Center is just a first-rate athletic facility for practice and weightlifting and training, and just an amazing opportunity for our coaches to really build on. And, I jokingly told Casey and Bart that I think they ought to be able to attract anybody now with the quality of the education and those facilities. And now with the Missouri Valley Conference opportunity, I think we're going to continue to see us get higher quality of players. And one of the things that I just love about watching both the men's and women's teams play is how well they play together as a team. I came to Belmont from Duke and knew Mike Krzyzewski pretty well, and when my appointment was announced, he said to me, he said, "Congratulations, I don't ever want to play those guys again." And it was because Belmont played them twice, played Duke twice, and lost by one each time.
Yeah.
But, Duke had more talent, but Belmont played better as a team. And we saw that, when the women upset Oregon and then almost beat Tennessee. One of my favorite tweets came out of Oregon. It said, "Our McDonald's All-Americans were beaten by Belmont's Hattie B's All-Americans."
That's great.
I love that, we may not have the talent, but we sure played extraordinarily well as a team and with a lot of heart. And now I think we're going to be able to raise the recruiting. The Crockett Center is just state-of-the-art Missouri Valley Conference competition. And coaches like Casey and Bart, we've just got an amazing opportunity for student athletes.
Well, great day at Belmont for sure. Missouri Valley today officially joining the conference. You mentioned great facilities, great coaches. Heck of a run right now you guys are on, and it's fun to get to see it like we all do here in this city. And we wish you continued success, sir. Greg Jones, president of Belmont University, thank you for the time.
Thank you for the time, and come out and see us next winter. We're going to have a great product on the court.
Yes, sir.
Love it.
It's
Absolutely.
gonna be some fantastic games, even great games coming in here.
Yeah.
You're talking about some of those opponents from the Missouri Valley as well. All right, open phones in the next segment. We'll continue to talk about college football, expansion. Also got a quote from you. One reporter says he may have seen the most ill-advised decision in college athletics history. Who is it, and what is he talking about? We'll share that next on Blaine and Mickey. Then along came a sports talk show, Blaine and Mickey. Will Boling sitting in today for Blaine Bishop, who is traveling the world somewhere. Lucas Panzica is in his normal spot. Both of you guys have really kind of been out of pocket lately. Will, you've been in here. Lucas, you've been. I mean, both of you guys have plenty of stuff to do. Yeah. But you've both done a fantastic job hosting and being like out front this week. So let me be the 50th person to tell you guys that you've done a fantastic job, both of you, this week.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I feel like everything that Lucas does without Buck is with me at this station. Like, we have high school football, we have the UT podcast, we have the Nashville soccer show. Like, I feel like Lucas is like, he can't get rid of me on the weeks like this. Lucas is waking up like, dang it.
I have like 3 work lives. I have one with Buck, one with Blaine and Mickey, and one with Will Boling.
That's true.
Well, you have all yours simultaneously. All my work lives came in different decades, starting in the 80s. So there you go, which is many decades ago.
I'm not going to
now.
tell you how many negative years old I was at that point.
Somebody tweeted today, it was like awesome 80s. It was one of the 80s accounts that I follow. The Walkman was invented in Japan in 1979. And I thought, wow, it only took it 4 more years to get to Arkansas. The Walkman, which I still have a cassette Walkman somewhere.
Do you really?
Somewhere in my stuff. I could, like, if you said find it today, I could find it by the end of the day. And I have a CD Walkman when I decided to get fancy.
I was going to say, it still counts as a Walkman if it's a CD, right?
I have both.
I
had the CD player, too.
Yeah, I had a CD player.
I had a portable CD player that I would take.
Did you have the adapter that would plug into your car so you could play CDs in your car? It looked like a cassette. It went in your cassette deck.
You're talking about like first and second grade Lucas and Will, not driving age Lucas and Will.
Yeah, right. This was like I would be sitting on the swing set. Where I was going with this
I forget that you guys could easily be my children.
Where I was going with this was like I for a sport turned left, and so I couldn't do anything with my hands or feet. So at recess, I wouldn't play football. I wouldn't like play soccer. I tried a couple times. It didn't go well for me. I would sit on the swing set with my portable CD player and a pair of big headphones, probably that look about as big as the ones I have now.
This is super sad.
And like listen, sometimes I would go run.
This is sad.
You wonder why? Like I'm in this business for a reason, Mickey. Like I wanted to be an athlete, and then I kind of was, but like not at a sport that people want to be an athlete.
I think 90% of the people in this business that are not former athletes probably are in that boat, right?
I'm like a little bit of both. Like I have a foot in both camps.
Both of them hurt though because of what you did for your sport.
That's very true.
I'm sad that you were a little guy with big headphones on the playground.
No, it was great. So it was like it was fun. It was fun. That's how I got, because we've bonded over this a couple times off air because people don't like, I don't know if I'm like unveiling the curtain here, but like my musical life, like it is for you, and obviously not as long as I'm a child, is what Jonathan.
You can just
Jonathan
say
Schaefer,
not as long because you're old.
No, it's because Jonathan Schaefer and Rhett Bryan always joke that I'm just like a child compared to everyone else, age-wise here, which is fair. But I don't even know where I was going with this now. I basically
your music, you said.
Yes, thank you. Like that was like a big part of my life. Like until basically I went to college. Like I'm making myself into more of a nerd than I already am. But I was like in an a cappella group, like in high school, like did all that whole thing, like
Bust
church
a little
choir.
Something out for us. Let's hear what you got
now.
Yeah, let's hear what you got.
I have
How about
already
some music to accompany him.
Relax. I've already made the admission that I did make a audition tape for The Voice at one point with Don Davenport on 3HL one day.
Okay.
It's a cappella, so we can't have music accompanying.
It's
got to be all.
I was in the choir. He
Yeah.
said at church they have music there.
Yeah. No, my audition tape for The Voice, I don't think ever saw air by anybody because I never sent it in. But that's a separate conversation of a different kind of chaos than what we're seeing in college football right now.
It very much is. Dan Wetzel, who was a fairly regular guest and I think still is on 3HL, he is a columnist, but he has a very pointed way of saying things, and he has a wicked sense of humor, by the way. Somewhere on this station's website is him on 3HL with us talking about the U.S. curling team that won the gold, 5-6 years ago, whatever that was, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It may be the greatest radio segment that I was ever part of. Him describing the U.S. curling team. Lucas, if you ever find that, it was fantastic stuff.
Taylor
It's in the
Lewan.
archive somewhere.
Oh, my gosh. It is so great.
U.S. curler Taylor Lewan, the guy that looked just like it. 5 years ago.
He said that guy, when he won, all he wanted was a McFlurry. Like
all right.
That's all he wanted. They interviewed him post gold medal, and he goes, I just want a McFlurry. Like, that's all he wanted.
Is that the new I'm going to Disney World? Is I get a McFlurry.
But if you win the Super Bowl,
medal.
you go to Disney World. If you win curling at the Olympics, you get a McFlurry.
That evens up. That's pretty much on the same scale.
So
That
Dan
tracks.
Wetzel, who brought you the story of the McFlurry, this is what he tweeted. It was either late last night or early this morning. This is a quote. 6 months ago, the Pac-12 and 8. Now think about this as I'm reading this. Digest this slowly. 6 months ago, the Pac-12 and ACC rejected a golden ticket football playoff plan with automatic bids and a cut of a $1 billion revenue pie. This is Dan Wetzel. This is the final quote. It may go down as the most ill-advised decision in college athletics history. This was them turning the boat right towards the iceberg.
It was. It was, and I think that's what this comes down to, Mickey, is consolidation of power. That when those teams that felt strongly about being for an expanded playoff earlier this year didn't get their way within the Pac-12, they said, well, let's head to a conference that is for that and that is going to be on the cutting edge of what is next in college football. Because when that happened, the reaction from people like us that talk into microphones for a living was not that, oh, well, I guess we're just sticking for four, with four forever or for the foreseeable future. It was, all right, well, that probably just means like the next time this comes back around in a year or two, it's just going to get passed then. Mm-hmm. We're basically kicking the can down the road of changing the landscape of college football. And those conferences wanted a bigger seat at the table, and the SEC and the Big Ten had different ideas of the automatic bids and the G5 getting an automatic bid and things of that nature. But I think ultimately this means that we end up with an even bigger playoff. I mean, I think 6 and 8 are now trending more towards 12 because you have a more clear path of you're the top 12 teams out of the power conferences or the top 10 teams out of the power conferences plus the next two that play in any conference. Then you're going to be in the playoff. It's fascinating to me.
If this thing does get to the two Pangea supercontinent conferences, as many have projected over the last, we're at 24 hours, literally a little over 26 hours and a half or whatever since this was announced. If it gets to that, and those guys become autonomous, as many are saying, the idea is that football can one day have its autonomy at the highest level. And so somebody's like, what does that mean? I had a guy tweet me, and I said, it means the top level could pay their players as employees and do and not have any NCAA restrictions. Right. They would govern themselves.
Free agency, it's re-signing periods. I mean, you're talking about salary cap. Maybe at that point, I mean, I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibilities of where we are heading when the P5 or the P2 or whatever it becomes consolidates power. That way it can more efficiently regulate college football.
But then you got to talk about eligibility.
Yeah, you do.
Right?
Two-sport athletes probably can't be a two-sport athlete anymore at that point. I mean, you have NCAA eligibility as a... Tennessee had 3 players that were going to be dual sport.
Was it D. Beckwith, one of those people?
D. Beckwith, Malachi Wideman.
Kentucky Wildcat.
Yeah. And Trayvon Flowers was going to be a baseball player for Tony Vitello and a safety for Jeremy Pruitt.
It never works.
Ended up never playing baseball.
Especially the basketball football thing in the modern era. It just doesn't
That's
work.
why I wasn't a dual sport athlete at Tennessee either. I just chose one. They just needed all my time. No, I'm kidding.
But really, though, what about those players that we had somebody call in earlier today and reference Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
The guys that were never projected to really make it in the league. They were first-round draft picks, but it turned out maybe how a lot of people thought it would, that would have made a ton of money in the college game, would have continued to dominate the college game. If it's its own entity, then how can we sit here and say you're only eligible for X amount of years to play in this league if it's not attached to scholarships and it's not attached to the university?
I feel like it still has to be attached to scholarships within some way. Like, I feel like the NIL aspect of it is going to be different, and perhaps the eligibility changes a bit. But in terms of the totality of scholarships, you put Title IX into that boat, as you know, Mickey, of non-revenue sports and having to balance out football with everything else that you have in your athletic department
and for people who
based on the scholarships.
And for people who don't understand what you're saying, I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
You have to have a woman's sports scholarship for every man's sports scholarship that you offer.
It's why, people know I ran
Title
track.
IX.
I ran track, and the women's track program gets 18 scholarships. The men's track program gets 12 and a half to give. because you're trying to make up for, there's obviously not women's football. That's 75 scholarships that you have for football. So then you have to balance that out on the other end. You take football out of that equation, then all of a sudden there's a massive gap in scholarship allocation based on the NCAA. You bring Title IX, you bring all these other sports into it that are still making you a lot of money, despite the fact that it isn't at the level of college football.
And that's why your lesser budget schools, if you ever look at their athletic page, they might have 4 men's sports. They might have baseball, basketball. Yeah. Well, let's say they have 6. They have baseball, basketball, football, golf, and track and field cross country.
Yeah, the small head count sports.
And then women's would have tennis and soccer. Like at Arkansas State, we don't have men's tennis.
Right.
We don't have men's soccer.
Yeah.
But we're trying to offset the number of men's scholarships.
Right.
So, and you're right, boys. I mean, if you have an autonomous football league with 40 or 50 or 60, whatever it lands on, how do you reconcile that with, okay, you have a pole vaulter and he has to live by, or a women's swimmer and she has to live by all the NCAA rules? Because the one thing that I always thought, okay, because this has been predicted forever, that the biggest of the big will just get tired of toying around with the other schools that don't have their budget or their reach. And one day they'll go, let's just go do this by ourselves. To me, one of the main things that tethered all of it together, though, was, of all things, not football, the NCAA basketball tournament.
Yeah.
Because you have to be an NCAA member to play in that.
Yep.
And as much as you think, well, shoot, Butler almost won that thing. I get it. But there's a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of prestige, and that's what everybody's playing for. And if you're Belmont, you're trying to win now Missouri Valley, just so you can get that's a bad example. They may get 2 bids, but for the OVC, you're trying to win that to get the 1 bid to the big dance. I mean, if you're in the SEC, as long as you're in the top, X amount of the conference, you're going to go.
And the TV money, where a lot of this is about TV money. You know what the TV deal for the NCAA tournament is with CBS and Turner? It's 14 years, $10.8 billion.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think
that's quite $1 billion a year, but pretty close.
It's not far off. And that's not something that I think institutions and athletic departments are going to walk away from in order to have more autonomy within college football. They already have it. I mean, look at what programs like Tennessee are doing right now with big, supposedly NCAA violations that we still wait on 2 years later after the Jeremy Pruitt era at the end of 2020. Look what LSU did in the Will Wade situation, incorrectly, but they still did it. They spit in the face of the NCAA and say, we're calling your bluff. North Carolina did it with academic fraud and was never really given any kind of penalty. I mean, and while Tennessee fans are sitting over here saying, yeah, we lost our basketball coach who's taken a SEC rival to the Final Four because he had a barbecue and lied about it. So it's the inconsistency of the NCAA that is now being overlooked and overstepped. I mean, the Power Five has just kind of leaped over that and said, you keep that over there for all other sports. We'll call you when we need you, but we want to run football like adults. If there are suspensions, if there are penalties that need to be levied, if there are financial restrictions, we're going to manage that on our own because it doesn't take us 2.5 years to do it. We're not going to tell Aubrey Solomon and Tennessee that one of their best players, and Cade Mays, that their best player is eligible after the first week of the season is already over. Mm-hmm. Those things are going to actually be wrapped up by spring ball. What a novel concept. It's things like that I think leads us to where we are now, of the consolidation of power of, look, Power Five has called the bluff of the NCAA and said, what are you going to do about it? We're making our own money. We're signing these TV deals as conferences, and, we'll call you when we need you.
Brandon Katz says in the Zone TV chat, and I think a lot of people think this, he said, the TV money is enough. Teams don't need the NCAA anymore. Look, I get that, but what the NCAA does, not only does it run the men's college basketball tournament and the women's, which don't want to fail to mention that.
Right.
NCAA track champions are crowned by the NCAA.
Yeah. Everything but football, basically.
Everything, every other lacrosse, swimming, diving, every other thing is administered by the NCAA. I wonder if we don't get to a point at some point, though, where it's like, look, the conference is going to handle investigating any allegations. You just run the tournaments.
Sure.
Just run the tournaments. That's what we want you to do. Run the tournaments.
Well, and that's the other thing I think people often forget is when they say the NCAA. The NCAA is made up of member institutions and athletic directors from across the country. Like, other than the executive director and the president of the NCAA, the people making decisions largely are athletic administrators and administrators within member schools. So people make up this big, it's not like, it's not the government. It's not different people that you've elected that are, no, like these are member schools and especially within college football, you have rules committees with coaches on them, with athletic directors on them. I mean,
Sure.
It's not just the big bag NCAA. Everyone thought Mark Emmert is kind of like Roger Goodell and just signing off on things. The schools help sign off on lots of things the NCAA does. It's, it's the infractions committee. It's that aspect of it that becomes more like the government. You feel like you're just working around red tape and nothing ever gets done.
What happens from here? I had somebody text me yesterday, a friend of mine, and said, do you think the bowl system will go away? No, it won't go away because it makes money.
A ton of money.
And Middle Tennessee and, Boise State and all these teams, even if they don't wind up in this Power 2 or Power 3, if there's some other, congealing of the other three conferences, there's still going to be bowl games for teams. Now, the criteria or who plays who. Will, you mentioned this. The people at the Rose Bowl probably had a funeral today.
I think that they are panicking more than anybody. Because think about how many things in college football, how much progress has been held back by the Rose Bowl.
Over two conferences sending somebody to play in the Rose Bowl when it gets played at the same time on the same day.
Literally.
By gosh.
Think of the TV ratings that are gained by just, not having semifinals on New Year's Eve when nobody is watching college football and wants to do everything else in the world and drink champagne and go out to, watch a ball drop or a guitar or whatever orifice is in their different cities. That's the Peach in
I don't think
Atlanta.
Orifice was the word.
That's probably not, but
that's
sphere. Yeah, whatever. But,
article.
But basically, like what they have done is they've always stood in the way of progress, and now they have no choice. So
I'm thinking of the wrong orifice there. Sorry about that. Yours is spelled differently. People are weighing in on this like crazy. Brandon is weighing in again, saying the lower bowls will remain, but the big bowls will go away. But no, they won't. I think they'll play playoffs at some of these. The Rose Bowl may become a playoff game.
And I saw somebody.
The Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl.
I think the Rose Bowl, if we get to the point where these conferences are 20, 30 teams, there's not going to be a conference championship game. You're going to have a conference playoff as well.
Sure.
And you're going to have a 4-team playoff, and the Rose Bowl probably ends up being the Big Ten championship game at that point.
Aren't you fine with that?
Absolutely.
Oh, sure, me too.
I mean, I think it's either a semifinal or it is a championship. And that report was made yesterday. I told this to Lucas on the Buck Reising show yesterday, too, and said, what this means is that the Big Ten championship is now going to switch from Indianapolis to Los Angeles. And then you get the report yesterday afternoon that SoFi Stadium is likely going to be one of the rotating hosts of the Big Ten championship game. Fox is in LA's backyard. Fox is in LA. Fox is going to get the Big Ten contract for a whole lot of money this summer. And that number probably is going to be released sooner rather than later now that all these changes have been made. So, I mean, the Rose Bowl probably just becomes a Big Ten title game.
And until that happens, how crazy is it to think that in, 2024 or January of 2025, like Ohio State and USC could play each other in the Rose Bowl, which you go, yeah, that makes sense. But as conference mates.
Yeah.
Not as,
yeah, right.
I mean, it's just insane to think about how much this has changed and what we all know and what we all call tradition. There is no more tradition. There's dollars. There's no more tradition. There's dollars. It's no more tradition. Dollars.
And that's probably why I am a little more okay with these changes as a Tennessee fan, because Tennessee, Alabama is going to be played.
Yeah.
Tennessee, Florida is going to be
still going to play.
There's probably tier 1 college football rivalries that are untouched. We're talking about probably tier 2. I mean, we already have the idea of Texas and Oklahoma State not going to play anymore.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma State doesn't join the SEC, which I think could be a logical next step as well. But, Nebraska has already given up a lot of their classic tier 2, quote unquote, Big 12 rivalries.
And they gave it up for this $100 million check.
For a whole lot of money.
Yeah, they look at the time. People are ripping them. You tore away your traditions. What are you thinking? You're losing games now. Yeah, but we're going to make $100 million a year, rather.
Yeah, right.
So Nebraska looks like geniuses today, and we were talking about this in green room before we came in here. The geniuses of all geniuses, Rutgers. They were the most heavily. I told you, I used to read everybody's budgets. They were the most heavily subsidized most heavily subsidized Power 5 team. Like Tennessee is zero subsidies. Texas, zero. They get no dollars from the school. Rutgers got more dollars from the university than any Division I Power 5 team. Well, they're about to get a $100 million check when the new TV deal goes through. It's crazy. Let's take one call right quick. Kevin in Franklin on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline. Then we'll come back and call our shot. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, so my only experience with the Premier League is through Ted Lasso episodes. But with conferences, could we have, like, the SEC be the Premier League and then, like, the next league down be the Big Ten League? And so if you finish last, you get relegated to the Big Ten, and then you've got to work your way back up into the Premier League, which would be the SEC. And then so that's a way where you can have some of these teams rise up that are some of them, kind of mid-majors would be able to kind of rise up through the ranks. And just a thought on that. That's all I got to say.
I think a lot of people have floated like, boy, the relegation for top level of college football, and maybe make like the Big 12 the relegation league, and it's like purgatory that you go there, but you could try to claw your way out.
Look, I actually really like the idea. The only reason why that doesn't happen in America is because of the dollars that you lose when you get relegated.
Yeah,
like.
No one's signing up for that.
It's ridiculous. Like the money that you gain. So the most expensive soccer game in the world is the promotion playoff that earns you a bid to the Premier League. The third through sixth place play in a 4-team tournament. And that game, I want to say, Lucas, now it's probably higher. It's definitely higher than it used to be. That game alone, if you win that game, you make $150 million.
Yeah, like he's talking.
I'm not kidding.
3rd through 6th in the Championship League, which is the second division of British soccer. If you win that,
one game,
and you clinch that last spot to be promoted into the Premier League, it is the biggest prize money of any sport on the planet as far as one singular game.
Boy, the pubs will be full, and then
you're losing that much. You're losing that much then if you get relegated.
And
so you're
pubs
losing
are full too. Yes.
$200 million.
But then you're telling Vanderbilt, like, oh, we go 2-10, we're going to lose that $50 million check. Nah, I'm good on that.
Yeah, not signing up for that. We're signing up for one more segment. It's coming up. Time to call our shot. You got a shot you want to call. Hit us in the Zone TV chat. Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline, 615-737-1045, or on Twitter at Blaine and Mickey. Another brick in the wall, the final brick of today's show. Blaine and Mickey, Will Boling sitting in for Blaine, who will be back. I almost said Monday, but if he's here Monday, he's going to be lonely. He'll be missing the local fireworks because he'll be here. We will all be out on Monday. So
That's right.
Hopefully you all will get some time to hang out with your family, your friends, do some fun stuff as well over the weekend. So there's a whole lot of talk again about who's going where and who's doing what. Lucas had sent us this earlier. I'd seen a reporter from the West Coast who had mentioned this, but now also, let me find it. Lucas Panzik and Will, the tweet from Dennis Dodd. Yes, it is Dennis Dodd saying sources, because we all started to speculate yesterday in the time that we had on the show, because we're reading this and learning about this in real time. Well, gosh, wouldn't you just call Oregon? Tap into more of the Nike money, and gosh, if you're going to take them, do you take Stanford? Because Stanford really probably fits the Big Ten profile as well as anybody who's not in the Big Ten with the academics. And Will, you were talking about this earlier with the Olympic sports.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Stanford's like the champion of everything every year,
They
right?
win the Director's Cup like most seasons.
And for people who don't know, that's like good at everything. Add up all the points from all the sports, and I think they have all the sports.
They do.
They may have dropped
they've
a
got
couple.
water polo. They literally have the money to do everything basically the NCAA offers.
I think like during COVID, though, they dropped like women's solitaire and men's jacks, something like that.
Tough decisions.
They dropped some sports that I did not know existed, like the 2-man water luge or something, creative riding. They dropped a couple of sports, and I said, here's the news to me. I did not know these sports existed.
They have sailing.
Sure they do.
Stanford men's sailing. Fencing, another one. Men's gymnastics, something that does not exist in this area of the country. Rowing, wrestling, water polo, outside of the normal ones. And then they have 2 different types of rowing. They have rowing LTW and then rowing for women's sports. Is that lightweight rowing? Is that like a smaller, or is this basically canoeing? Is that what we're talking about? Who's to say? They have artistic swimming.
Who's to say?
In addition to swimming.
Artistic. Do you like swim under, like you're painting, you're trying to come? So there's a time element
It's
to
actually,
get
that's what underwater basket weaving is. It's artistic. I'm kidding.
So it's like mogul skiing. It's like, wait a second, there's a time limit and you're judged on how well you flip? Mogul skiing do they have that too? Is there skiing in Palo
There's
Alto?
not. There is, so the women's sports, volleyball and beach volleyball. Also have fencing, field hockey, gymnastics, lacrosse, women's lacrosse there. 2 types of rowing, sailing, squash, and then water polo as well.
Can I tell you this? Boys, make a note. What's today? July 1st. It's 2:48.
Yeah.
Write this down. Every school that has to add a sport is going to add beach volleyball.
Yeah.
You know why?
Yeah.
Because it costs you 2 truckloads of sand and some spandex.
And what, 4, 5 scholarships probably? 6? Maybe?
At one point, I knew what the number was, and I'm sorry I don't know now. But if you're trying to equal up Title IX and trying to get scholarships, that is – now, there's travel costs because everybody's got to travel. But it's a sand pit and some spandex.
Average roster size is 16 in Division I. 62 schools sponsor it. 6 max scholarships for beach volleyball.
Well,
Nico Iamaleava would love beach volleyball to be added at the University of Tennessee.
I can just
He'd
tell
be
you.
a dual sport athlete.
Well, women's beach volleyball, I don't know about the fellas. But I think I was reading some stuff about the Sun Belt. I think they've agreed to sponsor that as a conference sport.
Yeah.
So just be on the lookout for that. That's one, just because you came here today for that kind of hard-hitting information.
Well, I consider myself
the luckiest man on the
well, that too. I said this yesterday that my old boss at Rocky Top Insider, when I was a beat writer, nicknamed me the non-revenue sports beat writer because I was a track and cross-country runner who covered Tennessee baseball before anybody cared what Tennessee baseball was doing.
Olympic sports. Well, that sounds so much better.
Yeah, it's better than non-revenue. But yes, anytime I'm on the airwaves, just expect all the non-revenue conversation that you're possibly going to get.
Boy, box
I
office,
say that sarcastic.
AKA box office poison. So this is what Dennis Dodd said. For all of us, it's a long walk here to get to this tweet. Oregon and Washington have been told by the Big Ten that it is standing pat for now. They are waiting on a decision by Notre Dame. So while you go into, celebrate this lengthy, long weekend of fun and, eating things and having a good time and shooting fireworks, just know that Notre Dame is holding the college sports world hostage.
Waiting on you, touchdown Jesus.
Waiting on you. All right, boys, we need to call our shot. We do this each and every Friday. We do it courtesy of our friends at Chattanooga Whiskey. Maybe you'll enjoy some of that over the weekend. This Chattanooga Whiskey 91 is an award-winning small batch bourbon available at your local retail store, Chattanooga Whiskey 91. So time to call our shot. Usually we let Lucas go first unless he's going to call the same thing that we know we're going to call. But I'll just take a chance today, Lucas. I'm throwing it to you.
I don't know if you guys will have this. I doubt you will. Will, you mentioned earlier that typically it's Greg Sankey. It's the SEC at the forefront of big-time change in college football. This was the first time in a long time that was not the case. The SEC is looking ahead here. The SEC can see where all of this is trending. I imagine they are making as many phone calls right now as the Rose Bowl is in an absolute. Maybe
I don't know about that.
Maybe not in the panic that the Rose Bowl is in right now. The SEC is a little more
Streets.
secure. But they're making calls. They're seeing where this is headed. This might be incredibly outlandish. But my shot is that by SEC Media Days, something will break that Clemson is going to join the SEC.
It's not a bad shot.
All right, Jerry Maguire with your goldfish in your bag. Who's coming with him?
That's the thing. Will it be a package deal or Clemson, the most high-profile program within the last decade, in that cluster that we talk about with Miami and FSU and North Carolina.
This is all a cluster, that's for sure.
It is a cluster. That's the question. Is it a package deal? And if someone comes with them, who is it? My first look is Miami and Florida State. I'm still looking at the SEC geographically. I feel like the geography matters to the SEC more than it does to anybody else because they still have the quality football. They have the blue blood.
Right, like Oregon's not joining the SEC.
They don't have to go to Oregon. They don't have to go to the Pacific Northwest. They can do it all in the footprint.
They're the anti-Howard Dean. We're not going to Oregon. We're not going. Sorry, it's two Howard Dean references.
I don't know who's coming with them.
I apologize.
I don't know who's coming with them, but that's my shot.
All
that
right.
we see a Clemson to the SEC report by media days, if not during media
all right.
days.
Let's write this down.
I think
I'm rolling on this.
Okay.
I think the one,
Okay.
the one coming with them, by the way, I think is going to be a team that doesn't have a natural rival within the SEC that's not going to pitch a fit, which to me is West Virginia, Oklahoma State, or Virginia Tech. I think are the other three, but that's just my perspective on that. My shot that I'm going to take, I'm going to cheat a little bit and say by the end of next week, because I don't know if over a holiday weekend this is going to happen. I think Notre Dame's a member of the Big Ten within the next 2 weeks. I think it makes sense geographically, even though that doesn't really matter anymore. But I think the Chicago market is going to become obviously the home base, as Indianapolis also is for the Big Ten. And I think that is the major market that they are going to want, with Northwestern obviously not really being as high in the hierarchy of the Big Ten and the way all of that works. So I think Notre Dame is in the Big Ten. I think it's a perfect fit. I think that they find a way with the Big Ten lawyers and with their own lawyers to get out of that big dollar they owe the ACC and start the wheels turning and join the Big Ten.
Yeah, NBC is factored in there as well.
That's true.
I wonder if Notre Dame, though, as far as the ACC, they only have to buy out of the Olympic sports part of the ACC because they're not a regular member. So they wouldn't have to buy out of 14 more years of football TV. Now, you mentioned NBC. There's some considerations there.
Sure.
But they would only have to, because they're not a regular member, I wonder if their grant of rights is different. So you're just buying Notre Dame gymnastics out of it.
Yeah, right.
So basketball games. So maybe that would be significantly different. I don't think it matters. They're printing money up there.
Oh, yeah.
Although they don't have the biggest athletic budget, which is funny to say. It's always Texas who has the biggest budget. Mine is this. I don't have any interior knowledge on this. A little birdie didn't tell me. But all these Elliot Friedmans and Pierre Lebruns and all of these guys seem to be saying, sorry, anybody who's French Canadian, they seem to be saying, sorry to just everybody for everything that's happened with me today. Sorry, mom and dad. Sorry, everybody. There just seems to be the winds blowing towards Philip Forsberg re-signing with the Preds. I'm going to call my shot that it happens. I went through a long stage where I thought they're going to lose that sucker. Then the report comes out that they're only asking for $8 million and change. Fiala just got his 7 and change and gets
the LA Preds,
La Preds. I think Philip Forsberg, you just can't let him go. You had your chance to trade him for assets. You didn't do it. Y'all get in a room and hammer this out.
I
Even
like
his dog and his lady friend, they don't want to move. Give him the gift of not having his independence on the 4th of July. Make him a predator. That's my shot. My other shot is it's time to go. Lucas, great job this week. Will, great job this week.
Thank you, sir.
And as Blaine and I like to say, in the meantime, in between time, everybody, peace. Have a great 4th. What? Hey.
Later.